Oh my God. Welcome back.
Hi.
I'm Jarid.
And I'm Becca.
And welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back to the pod.
Episode 3. Episode 3. Yee. All right, what topics are we doing today, Becca?
We are going to talk about expectations in your 20s and childhood, kind of unlearning your habits from your childhood. So get your beverage.
I don't even have my beverage.
He doesn't even have his beverage.
I don't.
A girl needed some coffee because we just did a whole photo shoot.
We did. You know what, though? I stand for those with no beverages. And for those who do have beverages, Becca stands with y'all. So
Yeah,
we're here to represent.
We're here for everybody.
We're here for everyone. We're all inclusive, mind you.
Love it.
Stop lying to yourself.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on expectations in your 20s?
It's interesting because I feel like this is something that I haven't really thought about recently. I'm 24, and then in April I'll be 25. So especially like early 20s, kind of been through it a bit. So I feel like, so I was thinking about this video the other day that was like, when you're 21, like 21 is the new 18, kind of, in America.
I would agree with that.
And like when you're 21, it feels more like I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I'm 24, so really I've only been an adult for 3 years or 4 years.
Because
So
I think nowadays too, like you're right, in America as a whole, no one thinks of like being 18 years old as being an adult anymore. They still think like, oh, you're still a little baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you get to your early 20s, is kind of when people are like, okay, let's get it together, kind of thing.
Exactly. And so it's kind of like thinking about, I've only had 4 years like in my adulthood, if you think about it. Like, so it's kind of like, I don't know why we put so much pressure. I mean, there's reasons why, but also like there's that pressure of like having your shit together. And it's like, what does having your shit together even look like? Because I feel like it's a feeling more than anything. Like for me, I realized like I stacked my schedule. I'm training for a marathon.
Yeah, she is.
I have this podcast.
She is running, sprinting.
Oh, I'm running.
She's booking, hauling ass, if you will.
And and I work as like a social worker full time, and I'm a full time student as well online. So it's kind of like you put all these pieces together of what you think it looks like to have your shit together, and then you're like, this is exhausting. Like, wait, maybe I should like do some self-care and like take care of myself in the process.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you said kind of about 21 being the new 18, and kind of when, like, saying that right now you essentially have like almost 4 years of adulthood. I think it's interesting because I moved out right after my 19th birthday, and I lived on my own. Like I did school for a little bit, but it was kind of during the pandemic. So when I moved out a month after the pandemic started, but I was in charge of all the bills, car insurance, phone plan, all that stuff.
At 19?
At 19, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it's interesting because I think that what I think about, because I'm kind of going back to school now. I was in school for a while, but for something different, and hence why we kind of started the podcast. How we started our friendship was I decided to go into psychology, instead of film. And I think it's interesting because I was talking to my parents, because I'm back home now after like 4 years of living on my own, and I've kind of come to the realization that I could sit here and feel incredibly behind compared to everybody else, because a lot of my friends who graduated from high school and then went directly into college are graduating now. And so I kind of feel like, oh, I'm kind of just getting started.
Yeah.
So I could feel behind, but the way that I kind of view it is that I did everything else that they're about to do, and I'm just doing it flip-flop. I decided to live on my own first and kind of learn how to be an adult and figure those things out first, and now I'm going to school because I want some stability. I want to have a job that I can rely on for a long time and kind of get my life going more, because what I've figured out is that when you move out early and you don't necessarily have a job set up, you very much fall into like service jobs. I was a server for a long time. And what I kind of realized is I was like, I'm making just fine money. I'm making more than enough to pay my bills and I'm fine. But I noticed that my life wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do. So I was just going to work like 3 days a week. And then the rest of the time I was kind of just like sitting, having way too much time to think to myself. And I was like...
Self-loathing is easy to do during that time.
Exactly. So
But do you miss it? Like, do you miss like living alone at all?
I do in the sense of like... I do in the sense of kind of like total 100% freedom, but at the same time, my parents have been lenient since I was out of the womb. Like, they're such lenient parents, and I think that one of the agreements when I came back, especially because they kind of coaxed me and convinced me to come back home, because I didn't want to come home at first.
Really?
And yeah, and they were kind of like, just come back home for a while. It's not going to be like this forever. You're an adult. We're not going to. You're not back at home. You're not going to get in trouble. We just want you to come back home so that you can get back on your feet and make this transition. And so I think that in a sense I miss it, but at the same time, it's not been too hard of a transition because my parents and I are kind of on the same page, if that makes sense.
Like you feel like you have good boundaries with them?
Yeah, and I feel like I don't feel bad for being at home right now because I know that for 4 years prior, I did everything myself, and I didn't ask them for help once.
Wow.
And so there were a lot of like learning curves I went through where I had to learn how to, be responsible and make sure that I could afford everything. And
would you say it was independent? Like they taught you independence?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it was a rough time because of the pandemic, but I do think that moving out early was something I kind of needed to do. I remember like 5-6 months before I moved out, I remember kind of feeling like, okay, I think we all know that it's my time here at home is up, and I kind of need to go out and kind of take the next step forward. I think being in an entertainment space and an industry and environment for so long, it's such an unconventional career field. So coming out of high school at the time, I was like, well, I'm not going to go to college, because if I did go to college for anything, it would be for film, entertainment. Until I started realizing that having a degree in film, having a degree in something like entertainment-wise, it's not going to have any weight or leverage. So I had the plan to not go to college forever until I realized as I got older, I was like, I want stability more than I want to struggle.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of struggle in that industry. And if you're strong enough to like put yourself through the struggle, like, props to you. I just think that, like I said last week, I think stamping myself with an identity so early kind of cheated me from figuring out other things that I would want to do and would be good at. And so I think that that's the portion of my life, of my 20s as a 22-year-old, that I'm going through right now, is kind of doing another pathway and maybe later in life coming back to entertainment, because it is something I hold near and dear to my heart that I love as well.
Well, it also sounds like film and acting, all that, like it's still like a love of yours and like a first love, and now you're on to your second relationship of like psychology. So it's like you still love that stuff, and it's still something that you can enjoy, and like, but psychology is like something that you could be good at as well, which is actually cool, because it's like you get to like try these things out in life instead of just doing one thing your whole life.
Right. And I also think the two of them sound very far away from each other, but I think as an actor especially, your job is to put yourself into other people's shoes.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, vulnerability, putting yourself in other people's situations and trying to understand people that aren't you. And so I actually think that the crossover, especially because I've written a lot too. Like I wrote a lot of short films when I was in film school, and I just think that I think I've always had a craving to understand psychology of people, which is why I enjoy writing characters so much. And I think that that's what helped that transition into the field of psychology. I think that as similar as acting and psychology are, that I just mentioned, I think that also entertainment can be such a self-serving career as well. And I think that for me personally, I felt myself kind of putting myself into an echo chamber of myself. And I was kind of like, I need something that requires me contributing more directly to somebody else and to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought of Squidward when he's like, alone, alone. And he's stuck. I don't know what I was thinking.
Alone.
It's like kind of like intense for SpongeBob.
It
but
really is. Very existential.
But when you said
for
echo chamber, I was
SpongeBob.
like, alone.
Echo chamber is my favorite word. I use it so much.
Yeah, let's do like an echo chamber count or whatever.
I know. A little ding for every single time there's an echo chamber.
I have my words too.
Oh, I feel like did my phone just go off? It did. And I'm not on vibrate. How freaking dare I? Disrespectful to Becca and myself.
Right.
And to all of y'all.
Right.
I need to get it together.
But also, I wanted to throw in here, because we said it in the first one, but like, please give us a call at any time. Anytime.
Yeah.
Give us a call, DM us on Instagram, message us.
Put it in the comments. Like,
Yeah.
if there's any, like, situation, just, like, shortly put it down and we'll go through and pick through
Anonymously. We will talk about your scenario.
Anonymously, of course. Gotta respect that.
Yeah,
Gotta respect
yeah.
people's privacy. But hopefully we can give you a little bit of advice, a little insight, a little, like, third-person outer perspective
Yeah.
that can help you out. Yeah.
Or if you want to come on, let us know too. Because, like, we'll come hang, you know?
What about your expectations for yourself in your 20s was one way when you entered your 20s versus now being in your 20s for a little bit? Like, what was the biggest difference? Or from your, like, preconceived ideas of what it would be?
Like, kind of like when they say, like, where would you like to be in 10 years kind of thing? Or you
Yeah.
mean-
Like, what was different about your 20s that you didn't think would be like a reality for your 20s, if that makes sense? Because we're talking about, like, expectations
Yeah.
and stuff.
Expectation versus reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think I expected to have nicer things.
You and my sister both. Yeah.
Like, girl, we can do a whole episode on financial journey because I'd love to talk about that. But now I'm in a great place. I'm working on, like, building my emergency fund and getting, like, a fully funded emergency fund, like $10,000 in there. But like, I think that's definitely one of them. Like, the student debt, like, you know, the schooling, you know, that's one aspect. Another aspect is my friendships. I think I've had a lot of, and also just in general, letting go as like a huge mantra in my life of like, it feels like things shift very quickly between like 21 and 24. Like 1 year can feel like forever and also so fast because it's like so much can happen. Like the relationships I have, some of them are relationships I've had, and I'm privileged and grateful to have some of my best friends from high school. But there's also people that like I met at work and I thought, oh yeah, like if I was getting married right now, they'd be a bridesmaid or they'd be at my wedding. And then like a year later, I'm like, maybe not, you know? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like just being like ready to change and grow quickly.
Adaptability.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go back to like what you said about finances in your 20s. I don't think I ever expected to have incredibly nice things, only because I knew I was going into a field that didn't make a ton of money unless you're like part of the top group. But I do think that one thing that I found interesting was how complacent you can actually be with finances as an adult.
Yeah.
Like, because I grew up, my mom had like a budget spreadsheet for everything. I mean, she kept receipts like to the penny, you know, like she
Wow.
kept up on all of it, and like just nothing slipped through. So I thought as an adult, like that's what I had to do until I grew up and moved out on my own and realized there were a lot of things that I could be complacent about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would get my paycheck and I'd deposit my money, and then I'd be like, oh, well, I have more than enough.
Yeah.
So I actually realized for a long time there was a responsibility, even though I was supporting myself 100%,
Mm-hmm.
there was a responsibility that I could kind of shirk a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, like, to this day, I don't think I budgeted the whole 4 years I was on my own until really, like, the last 6 months. Like, there were moments where I'd be like, oh, maybe I spent too much this month. I need to cut back on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never, like... It was never something where I kept receipts of everything, and I kept track of like my bank accounts and statements every single day. So I think that that's something that's kind of interesting about adulthood, is that like, and with finances especially, is that there are certain responsibilities in adulthood that like I just totally lost my thought.
Finances in adulthood.
I totally lost it. I think I was going to say something along the lines of
Budgeting?
like, as an adult, like there are certain responsibilities that you don't necessarily... Oh my God, I totally forgot it. I literally had it right there. I had it right there. And it was like, flew away. Flew away.
That happens.
Yeah.
This is a real human podcast right here, okay? Like, that happens.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of, I'm just now, like, a lot more aware and, like, of also...
Oh, I know what I was going to
There you
say.
go.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're
Hold
good.
that thought. Because I didn't hold mine. As an adult, it's interesting that you decide how much responsibility you want to take. That was the point I was trying to make, is that, like, me realizing that I didn't have to take care of everything and I was still fine. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because, like, even with, like, life coaching and stuff like that, what they teach you is, like, you kind of decide what you do every day, you know, and like how much of your life you take control of, how much responsibility you have. And I thought that was a really interesting, like, aspect of going into adulthood that I that wasn't expected for me.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. That always happens. Like, you'll forget it, and then as soon as someone starts talking, it's like it reminds you of what you want.
It flew right back. It flew right back. It was like a pet bird.
But, I think that... I just now I'm kind of getting into it for the last like year. I've been getting into it, and also just being a woman, there's a lot that they don't teach you. Like, everyone thinks that investing is like a man thing to do. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, they're all like, yeah, the stock market and stuff like that. And it's like, women can invest too, and we should. And like, we should have
the Golden fucking
retirement fund.
Bachelor. She was a day trader, we found out.
and
Miss
I love
Teresa.
that.
She was
And
a
I
day
was
trader,
like,
and she like, her career was in stocks.
Yeah.
A career woman.
We're watching The Golden Bachelor, as we
are.
discussed.
We
but
are.
yeah. So it's that's why I like was like, so this last year, like this, basically my whole 20s is basically about like, first off, you're parenting yourself. Like, I still have my parents, and I'm very lucky that they, you know, talk to me about things, but like they also taught me to be very independent. And so like, there's a lot of things, like I guess my expectations were that I would know a lot more on how to handle certain situations than I did, like these last 4 years. So it's been like a lot of like trial and error. And like, I think that's going to be your whole life. But I also think it's like, there's new things that like I've never gone through. I remember like, I used to like have really bad anxiety attacks, and I would, I'd be going through things like mental health wise. And I was like, would call into work a lot. And it was a struggle for a while, because that was like maybe like I said, like 4 years ago when that happened. And so I had to like really get on it with my habits, because you don't want to lose your job or things like that. But it was like, I was also in school as well. That was like my last year of like undergrad. So I think like that self-discipline, it's hard to like create those habits. But when that was happening, I remember like the guy, I would say he's like the front desk guy or whatever, but he also did like, you know, tardies and stuff. He talked to me. He's like, what's going on? And I was like, I think I'm not used to like getting out of school and working 40 hours a week. Like, this is not something I'm used to. Like, it's like, and I was working with children too. It's like, how do you do this? Like 8 hours, like sometimes you don't even get a break. And it's like, how is everyone else surviving? And so I was so like confused, like how like you see and hear these things, but that support, which is why I recommend getting a therapist, because that really helps during times like that. But yeah, like that support, like, what do you do at that time? You have to figure it out. Like, no one can like work the 40 hours for you. So
right.
Oof.
I think what's so interesting too is having this certain idea when you're a kid that adults really do have everything together, because you're hold on, wait. Oh, something was going on with my volume, and I like it silenced me. It silenced me. I didn't want to hear what I had to say, but I will be heard. I'll be strong. I'll persevere. Because as a kid, you're under that umbrella, you know? You're under an adult's umbrella. You think they have everything together, and I think that actually the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me was not myself, but also noticing and observing different adults around me. You know what I mean? Like, whether that be other people my age or a little older, it's kind of like there are some of them who really got their shit together, but there are some of them where they're so immature, even at like emotionally immature. And I think that's something. Oof. Maybe I talked about it last week, but maybe I can't remember. You can have everything. I feel like there's this like perfect timeline that humans try to stay on. I'm sorry. There's like this perfect timeline that like the average person tries to follow, where it's like you go to school, you get your degree, you get the job, then you get the partner, then you get married, then you have children. And I actually think that like you can do all of those things, but I think what a lot of people forget about is emotional maturity. And that was one of the biggest things that I recognized just observing adults around me. And I don't think I'm the perfectly emotionally mature person, but it was such an interesting distinction.
It's a lifestyle.
But it's interesting. It was interesting to see that distinction between literal maturity and then figurative maturity, because it's like because both of them need to go hand in hand. And I think that if you don't emotionally mature as well, it really does stunt your ability to physically mature, you know, with other aspects of your life.
Yeah, you gotta grow up. And like, I agree with that, because sometimes I just get so frustrated with like people in general, because I'll just be like, why can't people just like admit that they're wrong? Like, it's like so many of us, like, stop lying to yourself.
We were talking about this accountability. We were talking about this last episode.
It's so frustrating, because it's like, and I understand, because it's not fun to say that you did something wrong or that you hurt someone, but it's so freeing when you can just be like, and it's also great when you have like a partnership or a friendship like that. It's like so freeing, and your relationship is going to be so much better if you can, even in the midst of anger, just be like, I hear you. I understand where you're coming from. Even if you don't agree with them in the moment, and you know, okay, tomorrow I know I'll understand where they're coming from. Like, being able to like skip that, the fighting or the defense and all of that is huge.
It is huge. And honestly, like, I think that anger actually gets worse and fighting gets worse because subconsciously whoever is fighting is so scared of admitting that they're wrong. Whereas, like, I've noticed when I've had fights before, because I've been incredibly defensive as well, what has helped me so much has been I literally stop talking, I take a breath, I close my eyes for like a few seconds, and I think, okay, what am I doing wrong right now?
Yeah.
What can I fix with how
What am I in control of?
Yeah, how is there something that I'm doing that is causing a miscommunication? And so
But that's empathy for you.
yeah,
Someone who's empathetic and like wants to like work through things, you know.
thank God.
We need
but-
more of those.
But I think that in those moments when I do stop and think, okay, what can I take responsibility for right now? What am I doing? Let me look at the big picture. And when I do finally initiate saying, I might be wrong, a lot of the times that actually prompts the other person to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so then the fight dissipates. And so like anger and fighting and like hour-long fights that go
Like,
for
where
hours.
are we going? I think to myself, like, because Olivia, my sister, the other day was saying, like, yeah, like, I feel like, you know, people view you as, like, sensitive and all this stuff, but, like, you're really someone who's, like, takes a lot of people's shit. And I was like, well, the thing is like, what I've learned, especially now, like, not only with, in my 20s, but I guess because I'm in my 20s at this time in school, a big thing I've learned, like, in therapy that's actually helped me, like, in my real life is, like, there's always an underlying why behind why someone's doing it. Mm-hmm. Or if someone's upset, they're communicating something to you. What are they trying to communicate to you? And not just the surface level. I could be like, I, like, kick over this glass and I'm like, F you, you know, fuck you, or whatever. And then, like, you're like, oh, she's upset, like, you know, but it's not about the glass and it's not about you probably. Like what prompted that to happen? Like you may have said something like, yeah, you are sensitive or whatever from what I said. And then I kicked the glass. Well, that means that I'm feeling like what you're saying is confirming how I feel about myself. You know, I'm probably feeling like, oh, he thinks I'm sensitive, so it's confirmed that I'm sensitive. And I think the hardest thing that I've had to go through is like telling myself, and this helped with my anxiety a lot, is like telling myself, what if those anxious thoughts are true? Let's break it down. Let's break it down. My anxious thought is, you know, he thinks I'm sensitive. Why do I care about that? Why do I care that Jared thinks that I'm sensitive? You know? And then it's like, because I don't want to be judged by Jared, or because I don't want him to see me that way, or like I don't want to be perceived that way, or whatever it is, you know.
And it becomes projection. And I think it's like the simple example of like if somebody wants to watch a certain movie but another person wants to watch another one, the one whose movie doesn't get picked, if they have like an insanely angry response, most of the time it's not going to be about the movie. It might be about has this happened before?
Being considered?
Being considered or being heard. Has your decision been chosen over several times? And at that point, it's the pattern. I think
that's like a teen slamming doors. Like, that's why, for me, if my teen, I mean, I can't say because I'm not a mother. Mothers out there. Like, I can't say what I will do, but I imagine, like, in my head what I would do. And, like, if the teen is, like, slamming the door, like, I don't think I'm going to be the parent who comes up and is like, you can't slam the door. That's disrespectful. Because then you're just picking a fight. This is my house.
That's my door.
Yeah, like we all have done some shit where we're slamming the door, whether it's metaphorically or like whatever. And so like, first off, probably let them calm down. Like, or like you can tell them, hey, that's not appropriate later.
Yeah.
We don't need to tell people, try to correct people when they're upset. Oh, you can't be upset. That's what I feel like it's saying. Like, you slamming the door, like, that's not okay. Which is, obviously, we shouldn't be slamming doors, but, like, you're going to make a mistake or you're going to do something out of anger and teach them, like, hey, I understand why you're doing that, and, like, try to understand why behind that and what's going on.
Like you said at the beginning of your point is there's always a why.
Yeah.
Last week when we were talking about, like, the specific emotion of anger, that was one of the most misunderstood feelings. I feel like it's one of the most misunderstood feelings because anger almost always comes from a specific why.
Yeah.
You know, anger usually comes from hurt and pain, which we established last week, but that's an example of the why.
Yeah.
You know, it's things usually aren't that surface level, and I think that this brings up kind of an example that I've kind of seen online, and like you see so many different experiences from different users when you're on social media, is that a lot of people will have arguments with their partner, and the partner will not understand why they're upset, and it's because usually one person doesn't understand that what they're mad at isn't the action, it's the principle of the action.
Yeah.
That's what they're upset about. And I think that I really feel like in high school there should be an emotional intelligence course that is taught. Like that's close to therapy, but is like widely taught for how people can regulate their own emotions, because I feel like that spreads into people as old as 70 years old. It's stuff that people never understand within themselves and don't understand within other people. And it's why I really feel like that's the root of so much conflict, is like refusing to see someone else's side because you haven't been given the tools or resources to understand the other side.
And I've always, something that I learned from a good friend when I was working with kids with autism is like, it's not the child, it's the behavior. And like, that's true with adults too, where it's like, we don't need to like bring people down to, oh, you are a crier. You are a person who cries. You're just like, you know, it's one of those things.
You're a crybaby.
Yeah, you're a crybaby.
Or
you're a bad kid, or you're you know how they be calling kids things like they're
when
like.
When you tack a name onto a child, they automatically start seeing themselves that way.
Oof. Yeah, I don't like that. And there's certain things, you know, and a lot of people do not think this way. You know, they still do it to this day, where it's like people can be understanding and like understand therapy and even be going through therapy, and like they'll mess up as parents and say something to their kid like that. And I think parents could say sorry too a lot more, or like to give remorse a lot more as well.
Actually, my relationship with my parents got so much better when they started doing that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, like...
model that to your kids.
Yeah. I mean, I think...
which goes into kind of the topic of what we are going to talk about, is like childhood.
I was going to say like 4 or 5 minutes ago when you were bringing up like... you were saying something a few minutes ago, and I was like, that's a wonderful transition into our next topic, which is like child behavior, and then unlearning a lot of that behavior as an adult. And at least how I took that topic, I think are you talking about like as a child, what your parents kind of instill in you versus unlearning some of that as an adult?
Yeah, and then also it could be your environment, like it could even be your environment at school, or what, you know, whatever influence in your life, you know, it could be your friendships, because some people, you know, you're influenced by your parents, but you're also influenced by other people in your environment and yourself. Yeah. Unlearning what you've told yourself.
So are there any behaviors from your childhood that you can speak specifically that come to mind when you think of like certain things that were norms, that were givens as a child, and as an adult you've kind of understood that you've had to unlearn it?
Yeah. Or things where my parents, they were teaching me one thing, but maybe they didn't, I don't know if they necessarily thought about the consequence of what the other end of that would be. For example, my parents were like, I just want you to be kind and empathetic and loving, and I am that, and I do think that they're a big part of that, like teaching that. Like, you know, if I said something to a kid in public, they would like call me over and be like, hey, you can't say that to a kid. You know how kids are, like you just say whatever to someone, like, oh, you're ugly or whatever, and then they're like, you can't say that to someone. You know?
Why does your nose look like that?
Yeah, exactly.
What are those dots on your face?
Exactly. So it's like, they taught me, like, you know, that stuff, but I would always be friends with kids who needed help, who I was like the giver, the person.
Oh my God. Continue with what you're going to say, but like, yes.
The kid who just like if there was like an outcast, like I would be like their friend and stuff like that. So it's like.
That was exactly me.
So I think a lot of unlearning would be like, I didn't learn the word boundary until I was like in high school.
All right. Let's move, Mr. Man. You can lay down. Lay down. There we go. Good boy. Such a good boy. You smell like Fritos.
I know. Apparently that's like their like paws, like the iron in their paws or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a universal dog smell.
Fritos.
Yeah. What were you saying?
So I was always friends with outcasts. I would always be friends with people that like I could help. 'Cause in my head I was like, well, I have great parents, like I have a good life, like I feel like I want to give back to people, and then like it just always happened that way where I would be friends with people, and then but then they weren't reciprocal in friendships a lot. It would be people that like they can't mentally do it, like they're dealing with stuff, and I can understand like maybe why they couldn't give back to me, but there was also times where I don't think that I had enough, what's the word? Like wanted more for myself, if that makes sense. That now
Maybe
as an adult, I
you weren't
wouldn't.
even aware of the fact that you. Hello? Okay. You weren't even aware of the fact that you may have needed more. It just
Yeah,
wasn't something that you
exactly.
were cognizant of.
Yeah, which I think is nobody's fault. Like, I mean, that happens and you're not really consciously thinking about it. But now as an adult thinking back, I'm like, girl, like you don't need to be friends with that person. And also now,
Yeah.
like I can struggle with in my work environment, in my past living environments, like things like that, where it's like I feel like I have to be friends with everybody, and then it's like you're not going to be friends with everyone, and you're not going like the people pleasing mentality
Yeah.
and like wanting a certain relationship with everybody and feeling anxious if my relationship wasn't that way.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting and tiring.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, I would envy them and be like, wow, like, they can just go to work and be in the work mentality and just go home. And I was always someone who, like, wanted to put my all into everything.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but then I'd be so tired. And then it's like, which I love about myself at the same time. It's like, I don't want to lose that because I'm in psychology and, like, want to be a therapist because of all of that.
Yeah.
But then also finding the balance of, like, okay, you're going to work with people or meet people that you just, you know, they're just there. Like, they're like a coworker, and having to label that in my head rather than like feeling like I need a friend at work.
I was talking to my friend back in California, and there was one time we were talking to each other, and she said, "I just crave such deep connection with people," and I'm also one of those people.
Me too.
I've always craved such deep connection with the people that I talk to.
Yeah.
But my parents have told me before, they're like, it's okay to just have friends who are acquaintances. It's okay to have people in your life where you're not up in arms with them all of the time. And I think that's actually a healthy sentiment, which I don't think cheats that quality of wanting deep connection, of craving deep connection, but I think that it releases a little bit more pressure off of your shoulders that you feel like you have to know everybody at such a deep level.
Yeah. And you can still be friends if you haven't seen them in a while.
Exactly.
Which is a thing I learned also in my 20s is like, you can like, what do they say? Like, meet where you left off. And I do have a lot of friends like
I have
that.
a lot of friends like that.
Which is amazing. And it's like, why did I put that expectation on myself of like some certain criteria in my head?
Because that shows that distance and time has an impact on that friendship, and if it doesn't, then that's a really strong friendship.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you were saying about when you were a kid going up and making friends. I wasn't a kid who. So I went to school up until 3rd grade. I was homeschooled for 6 years, and I went back to school in high school. As a kid, I always asked myself, was I confrontational or did I genuinely not fit in? That was one of the, and so when I was a lot younger, I already felt like an outcast because it seemed like it seemed like people didn't like me very much. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm 4. Like I'm 5. Like I don't even know much about anything. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
So a lot of the friends I made were the kids in the corner because I was oh, I'm also the kid in the corner. And so I feel like I've operated a lot of my friendships in the past like 20 years that I've lived on that sentiment of I never want people to feel as bad as what I've been made to feel before. And I think that sentiment can get you in trouble.
That gave me chills for some reason. I don't know.
But I feel like that I've always liked that sentiment. I think that's a sentiment I want to keep in my life is even though it can get you into dangerous situations with other people, whether that be friends or relationships or adults, like I would rather go through those and then still keep and hold on to that sentiment.
Yeah.
But I think that it was weird because I was never popular until I went back to high school. And the only reason why I was popular was because I came in in the middle of the year, and at that point I had acted and been on TV and like done stuff. So it was kind of like I got really
And
popular.
do we mean like well known or like well liked?
Both.
Okay.
But that was something that changed in high school was my first year of high school I had a lot of friends. And that dwindled significantly each year. So it got to the point where at the end of high school I didn't really like anybody.
Yeah,
And
I feel that. You're ready to get out of there?
yeah, there was just so like I would just walk the halls and there would be so much unnecessary drama that I'd be like, "Oh my god, there's so many more important things."
Yeah, I agree.
But
wanting that connection at that point.
And so I got to a point in high school where I was well known, and I feel like a lot of people respected me, but it was also too I was made fun of behind my back a lot too, and that was something where, and that's why I've always kind of asked myself. I've always wanted to. I've always checked in and been like, okay, is there something about me that is kind of a red flag that I'm maybe not aware of that I need to change, or is it other people as well? So it's like this weird sense of like I want to take accountability, but sometimes I don't know what it's for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was also going through things with my sexuality, and like that's part of what I was talked about a lot behind my back is people talking about me being gay.
He's so cool. Like, but
yeah, like what is he wearing? Like, you know, and it was always this air of like people respected me to my face, but I always knew that they were saying shit when I wasn't present, and it was always confirmed. And so that was...
It's like, oh. Would you rather, like, would you rather not know, or would you rather know?
I would. I think going back to the main topic of, like,
What you've unlearned, yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Unlearning certain things as a child, I think my whole life I've had really bad trust issues with everybody. And I think that the only time I had reprieve from that was when I was doing entertainment, because I was so busy and I was doing such fun stuff. But it's something that as an adult I've been trying to unlearn, is not being able to trust people, because not trusting people oftentimes turns into isolation. You become most comfortable when you're isolated from people because you don't have that fear of having to trust other people or not being able to trust people, because you know, if I got myself, then that's all I need.
Yeah.
But one of the things my friend in California...
That's playing it safe a bit.
Exactly. It's not pushing your... Is it a boundary or is it a comfort zone?
And also, as someone who craves the deep connection, how are you going to do that if you don't have the trust with somebody?
Exactly. So I think that my friend in California, she grew up with so much community around her, and that's something that I didn't grow up with a lot of. And so it's been a really nice experience in my 20s and getting older and realizing that it's good to have community around you. It's good to instill your trust in people, even if it's not always returned. Yeah. Because you have to give yourself the opportunity to feel those things, because you're never going to feel those things if you're so fearful of bad things happening.
Oh, yeah, letting go is huge. Mm-hmm. And like you said, like I think I've been able to have trust because of, first off, telling myself that whoever I didn't trust or whatever happened to me in my past as to why I can't trust are the people in the past. And like that's not fair to the new person that I meet.
It's so hard to switch that too. It's so hard to switch that around and realize you're doing that.
And it's not fair to them because they're giving their full self to you. Mm-hmm. And like you want to give that so bad, and then it's hard.
Are there any time. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, that was it.
Okay. I was going to ask you, are there actually, because I was thinking about myself, some of my behaviors stem from acting like my parents or acting like my mom or my dad. So I was going to ask you, like, are there any behaviors or character traits that you find where you're acting just like your parents that you feel like you've had to unlearn?
Oh yeah. And I also just think like coming to acceptance of who you are today. Like, for example, like if I'm doing something, like I think like we often like fight with ourselves instead of just being like for a while I'd be like so mad that people called me sensitive, and then I said, fuck it, I am sensitive. Like
I'm sensitive.
I'm a
as
sensitive
all
ass
hell.
bitch. And actually it helped because then I also ended up getting stronger in a weird way because you're like, you can kind of move forward, and like I turned it into like a strength rather than,
Because you're not scared of yourself, but you're empowered within yourself.
Exactly. And that's like a huge thing I've been working on for sure. And then with my parents, oh my gosh, my mom, she's a talker. She loves to talk. If she ever listens to this, I apologize. But like, but I don't, because Mom, you know
not to get
that you
messy
like
on
to
the
talk.
pod.
No, I don't care. Like,
Love
she
to the
knows.
rents.
We love Rhonda.
We love Karen. Karen with an I like to think she's different.
Love? Yeah, I know. I just find it funny that's her name. She probably hates it because of the trend of everything.
And she knows about it. She knows about like the Karens.
The Karens.
So
She's
hilarious.
like, I'm not a Karen.
She's like, I'm not a Karen. I'm like, but you are a Karen. And you do be Karen.
You do be. But yeah, like my mom, she gets like, you know, up there, like moving around, and I definitely get there too. And I think a lot of that, like, you know, like she'll be going and moving things and cleaning things, and I'm like, I started getting that behavior as well. Like, like when I would get stressed out, I would just be like cleaning things and being frantic, I guess is the word. Kind of being frantic is a behavior that I learned. And then with my dad, like I was just thinking of a funny one, which is like when I go out and I have errands to run, like he would have it like he would have things like listed out in his head where like, oh, we're in the area, so might as well drop off my dry cleaning or whatever. And now I've like realized that I'll do that. I'll be like, oh, I had to go out of the way to go do this or whatever, versus like that's a normal thing. Like not everything's going to be on like a perfect plan, but like I would be like, okay, well, I need to go grocery shopping and I need to like drop something off at the like Amazon drop off and I need to whatever. And I'd be like pinpointing, and it just felt like good to me to have it like laid out that way. Or like my dad will do the gas and it'll like go like he'll go to get it to like a good number.
Oh,
and sometimes
yeah.
I'll do that where I'll be like, if it's $30 and it's like 29.5, like 29.50,
Gotta get to an even
like,
number.
And I'm like, it's like dung, dung. It's like, please fucking stop.
It's like, bitch, quit. We're full. We're fucking full. It's enough.
So like little things like that. But I think also being sensitive and like sweet and all that, I got that from my dad as well. And then the running, my mom's a runner, so she taught me that too. So there's a lot that I've like learned from them. So
that's so interesting. I feel like I think one of the most interesting things is when the first time I realized how similar my behavior was, and I was like, oh my God, I'm acting like my mom. It was so crazy because like fight or flight response.
yeah.
It's like, we fight and then we flight. So it was kind of like I realized that if I wasn't being heard, I would go silent and I'd run away, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm just mirroring that behavior. And it was one of those things where
have you stonewalled like in relationships as well, or not? It doesn't get to that point.
I have, yes. I think in my last relationship, it's nuanced, because in my last relationship, I wasn't listened to ever.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The fights lasted so long because it was either going to be his opinion or the fight was going to keep going. So a lot of that. So what would happen is I would realize I'm not being heard, and then I would leave. And I think that in healthy relationships, that's an unhealthy response.
Yeah.
I think in my situation, it was still unhealthy at times, but I think that now I understand the context of why I was doing that behavior.
Yeah.
But also too, like it's always obviously not always bad things. I've realized like a lot of I'm like my parents in the sense of my dad's a really deep thinker. And so
my dad too.
So like they're being back home.
We need to do a parent pod.
Yeah, we do. Invite the rents
We
down.
should do that for like, that would be fun, or like a Mother's Day pod.
Oh, that'd be so cute.
We could bring them on.
I would love that.
That would be fun.
My mom is helping
My
us
mom will talk about running for sure.
our mothers would fucking love each other because my mom's a runner too. I don't even know why I didn't mention that, but she's a runner as all hell. She's like a fucking road runner.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We'll do a Mother's Day.
We should.
We should. That means we have to keep doing it until then.
Yeah, I know, right?
We will. It's not that
we will. It's not.
It's fun.
It is fun. But I feel like my dad's a really deep thinker, so when I moved back home, there was a lot of like mental health stuff that was really delayed for me. I was struggling a lot. I was supporting myself, but I was struggling up here a lot. And talking to my dad's oftentimes like really helps because he understands what it's like to get so in your head about things.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that I took from my dad as well. But I think that being a deep thinker is also, it's a wonderful quality because you understand a lot.
Yeah.
But sometimes you understand too much to a detriment.
Yeah.
It's not like I understand too much, but it's like you can be so self-aware of your emotions and other people's emotions and what's happening that you like think yourself into a hole. It can be hard
to let go and also just like relax a little bit. And like not even relax, but more like disconnect actually.
Yeah, detach.
Yeah, detach.
For a second. Yeah.
We disconnected for a second. I was like...
We did. We said, hold, pause.
Well, actually, I wasn't disconnecting. I was thinking about it. I was like, oh.
We were processing. But I want to dig into something too. Mm-hmm. I feel like being in your 20s, I saw a video the other day that was kind of like, when you're a kid, they're like, oh, when you're a teen, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
When they're like... they were like in high school. You're like, oh, you have all 4 years of high school to figure it out.
What did they tell us in our 20s?
And then she was like, I still didn't figure it out. But then when I got into college, they were like, oh, you have all 4 years of college to figure it out. She said, I'm out of college. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing still. They said, oh, you're in your 20s. Like you have up until you're 30 to figure it out. And
that's probably the scarier part is being 30. You're like,
she looked at the camera. She said, when the fuck am I going to figure it out? Because what's the next? Oh, you have time. Do I have time until I'm dead? And so I think I was going to combine that with, like, I think that going through your 20s now is a lot different than going through your 20s in past generations. And I think a lot of it, too, is, like, we're talking about expectations in our 20s. I think that we were talking about social media on the first podcast. Yeah. I think that, like, expectations now more than ever are larger now more than they've ever been because we see so many people who are successful by the time they're 19.
And you know how I said like getting stuff, like I would see videos, like social media is a huge thing, but see videos of like people's like beautiful bathroom with new cleaning girl videos. I'd be watching those and like
clean girl aesthetic.
Yeah, like with you don't need like 20 different products to clean your house, girl. But it's like it's just advertising. But like like and like these apartments and like the slick hairstyle, the clean girl, like these looks, which hey, like some of the looks I still be doing, but I'm just saying
of course.
But I'm saying like this picture perfect thing.
And a lot of the times this sounds so cliche and corny, but it like for real, a lot of the stuff you see online really is not what you think it is.
We did our photo shoot and it was like I didn't realize how much like posing changes everything too. Like
you got like things that look natural on camera are so planned, and so I think like if you look at really, I'm not gonna say any influencer, but if you look at most influencers' places, it's mostly incredibly empty except for the spaces that they film in, and it's just like empty boxes of stuff that brands have sent them. So the products that they use in their videos and a lot of the stuff that they use, they get for free because it's being traded in for a brand deal. It's not actually
too, have they ever like shown it and then they're not even using it? Like they're just like splashing their face or whatever?
Yes. And it's There's actually like a few Vanity Fair or like Vogue interviews where they're like, get ready with me, and they're like, she didn't even touch her face. I think Ariana Grande had one of those where they were like, she didn't even wipe the makeup off.
No. Or they start with already makeup on. Mm-hmm. Like, girl, which I get it. Like, if you're a celebrity, like, millions of people looking at you. But it's also like, we want relatable.
Yeah.
Like, we want relatable. Like, Kim, like everyone, no one's gonna have a Kim K body. Like,
Yeah.
and
I
it's
think,
like,
no, go ahead.
no, it's hard. Like, I mean, I was watching like the season and it's just crazy, like the things that they talk about, and you're like, what?
The things that they make as storylines, I'm like, this is all they had to work with. I'm like, of course this is all they had to work with. Their entire lives have been curated, so what part of it is going to be relatable? And I actually think that that's something that people now, more than ever, I think like we're transitioning into a weird part of social media where people crave relatable content. People crave relatable people, and people are becoming aware.
People are afraid to do the relatable content.
Yeah, or people are so... I think audiences and consumers are aware of how curated influencer lifestyle is now, that it's like we're kind of anti-influencer at the moment.
But then some people also hate it because they're like, oh, well, first off, they'll judge you for whatever thing you're trying to relate them with. Or like, for example, like body positivity.
For being relatable?
Huh?
They'll hate you for being relatable?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're never going to win. So might as well just do, I believe, just doing with what's authentic to you.
Yeah.
Like whatever feels good to you, that you feel like you listen back to, you watch, and you're like, I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that I want to do.
Yeah. I think also too, humans are not built to mass display ourselves the way that we do now. TikTok is one of those things. It's cool, it's fun, it's a nice space, but people are documenting themselves all of the time. So I saw this video somewhere where it was like, where he was talking about how social media is such a counterpart to how we exist now, that people are kind of always performing. And he said that what our future is going to look like is that we're always going to be acting. Even when cameras aren't on, even when our phones aren't documenting, we're just always going to be performing for everybody there. And I think that like growing up and trying to find adulthood within the scope of social media, I find myself so often being like, God, I wish I could go back to like the year 2000 or the 90s. Like where we had like central news stations, and we had, like, the way that you got things was by going places. Like,
yeah,
like
someone was saying that too. Like they're trying to like they're like shutting down like malls and stuff.
Yeah,
everyone's doing like online
third spaces. That's what they're called.
Like drive-in theaters, they don't really have as many of those, and things like that are like, well, so that means we're still staying inside the house.
Going to movie theaters. I was gonna say, your hair is laid today. She's out. She's she's full.
Yeah, because last time
she was up.
Yeah, last time I had this like that clean girl look, as I said. But
you did. But you're in your like very autumn fall Christian girl era right now.
For the photos, I was like, I like having my hair down, and I like all the looks, but
Yeah.
I like doing.
You look
curly
good
hair.
with any way you style your hair.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you.
Of course.
That's the other thing too. I feel like adults need praise too. Like kids all the time
Oh,
be
you were
getting
saying
like,
that last week, yeah.
you're so good, you're awesome, and it's like adult is like, ooh, like you have to like sometimes praise yourself or like give yourself validation, but it's also okay to be like, hey, I need a little validation, Jared. Like I'm just, I'm needing some love recently. Like I'm needing that. Like, and I feel like that's okay to ask for.
Yeah, 100%.
Your point.
What was I saying? I was saying like
Movie theaters.
Oh yeah, like even like movie theaters. They're saying like most people are like, they've done surveys where they're like, if you are gonna go see this movie, they're like, no, I'm just gonna wait until it comes out on streaming. And I think like they're doing this in almost every other aspect in industry, and it's like malls are going away, online shopping is so popular. But I saw this video the other day that was talking about like the teen girl and like how teen girlhood is changing, and if like teenagers really exist anymore, like the era of being a teenager. And she was basically talking about how like the elimination of third spaces is huge. Like malls used to go places, and that would be part of like your experience of being a teenager, of like going to the stores that were cool. Nowadays, like, we only have those certain places, but they're online spaces. And so I think, like, elimination of, like, third spaces is making our world more isolated and more, honestly, stagnant than ever. And, like, this connects to the points we've been talking about, like, expectations of your 20s and growing into adulthood. It's like, that's the point of your life where you're supposed to be progressing, and it's hard to do that when things are becoming so much more closed up, which is why sometimes I wish we could go back 30 years and I could live in that time, because I'm like, people used to just talk to each other more often.
Just more events and things to go to, and yeah, like,
even watch sports. People used to, like, certain, like, even the niche sports had, like...
And also you had to go out to watch it, because, like, it would only be at, like, the sports bars or whatever. I mean, people still do that, but, like, more not our generation, not as much, but
I mean,
they'll go to people's houses, but...
Yeah. I mean, it's not been, like, a drastic change. It's been a big change, and obviously people still kind of do the same thing. There are still third spaces. I just think that, like, for generations coming up, it's like you gotta make it's not so much a norm to be so social anymore. You have to make effort. Like, even you were talking to me about, like, having to put effort into, like, setting up friend nights. Like, you have to put effort into, like, staying social, because it's so easy to, like, kind of block yourself off nowadays.
Yeah. And I'm at the, like, at 24, I feel like it's the time where you're like it's like, like, people will drink to go out and, like, hang out, but also, like, I think people are also like, like, considering not doing it as much and stuff like that. Like, it's like the, like, I'm figuring out, like, my lifestyle and, like, my career and stuff like that. Like, that self-discipline is definitely coming out at this point where it's like, all right, I'm in my master's program. I'm on my way with my career. I mean, other people my age may not be in that spot, and that's totally fine. Like, that's kind of somewhat of an expectation. I mean, like, kind of like where I think generally people are, kind of thing. But that does not mean you have to be there. And if you are 24, you don't have to be there. Like, we all on our different timelines, a different journey. And, like, don't worry about that.
All on a different journey.
For real. But I feel like we've talked about everything.
Yeah, I was just gonna make one last point. I do feel like as someone in their 20s and, like, going through your 20s, I feel like there's kind of two different kinds of people. There's people who are trying to figure out their lifestyles and what works for them and what's unique. But I've also noticed on the flip side of the coin, there's a lot of people who put off that learning curve, and they use going out. And they use going out to, like, the club and to the bars and stuff like that to, like, to stop them from understanding what gets their routine
like
going.
Getting serious about things.
Yeah, like there was somebody I met here, and I'm not gonna, like, name names, but spent the entirety of 18 and after, like, just blacked out, not having any idea what's going on.
And I feel like it's, like, a time where, like, it's like you're very susceptible to, like, becoming an alcoholic and, like, scary things like that.
Yeah, and I didn't know them the whole time. I just met them not too long ago, but I was just, like, thinking, I was like, man, this is a time for you, now that you're out of it, to really start to understand who you are, what makes you go, what your hobbies are, because part of what gets exhausting about doom scrolling, being someone like that, is that you are a zombie at that point. There's nothing that passionately drives you. And once you have stopped using vices and, like, temporary things just to kind of put off that responsibility of getting to know yourself, I feel like you're free at that point. And, like, I mean, I don't drink, I don't do all that stuff, and it's not like I'm anti this. Like, I'm not a prude, obviously, but I'm more so talking about, like, substance abuse.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, once you're out of that, it's like there's an opportunity there for you.
And who you surround yourself by. I mean, it can be very easy if, like, your friendship has only been that, and it can be scary to be like, what else do we do? It's also just easy and accessible. So it's kind of like, I think if I were to give advice to anyone in those situations, is, like, first off, try being friends with people who don't drink, and that could help too. Or, like, people who are on the life path that you want to be on, and hang out with them. Reach out to people, say, let's go to a coffee shop. Hey, how about let's start a podcast? Or things like that. Things that can, like, fill your time and bring you joy. Like, because alcohol is not going to bring you that, like, that warm joy inside of you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's another kind of joy. It's like sometimes people with anxiety, they'll use alcohol to loosen themselves up so that they can talk to people more. When it becomes something that you're reliant on is when it becomes unhealthy. But also too, like, I guess more kind of what I'm saying is like you don't have to isolate yourself to understand who you are. I think it needs to be like a healthy balance between isolating yourself, understanding yourself outside of your influences, but also still putting yourself in situations where you can be influenced a little bit to understand how you work within society, what your dynamic is with yourself and then with other people. It's like two separate things.
And I live by like not shaming yourself and telling yourself like, I understand why I'm in this position. I understand what's going on. Being kind to yourself, and then being like, what can I add to my life rather than what do I restrict from my life, you know?
Yeah.
And then if there's more things added, then naturally things restrict. So it's kind of like, you know, add walking to your routine, or add like meditation to your routine, or journaling, or add like you said, a hobby, or add, and then you end up being more focused on that, and then it kind of diverts or redirects you in a way, and like start redirecting yourself rather than shaming and hating on yourself.
And if you're somebody who naturally goes to blaming yourself, being disappointed in yourself, and just beating yourself up, for people who do that, because I am so susceptible to that, and I feel like you are too, the most important thing is to give yourself grace on the days that you aren't living up to your expectations, especially if you're in your 20s. Give yourself the grace to understand it was just a bad day, and I'm still progressing, still moving forward, and just... yeah, your 20s are your time to figure yourself out, figure everything out, I guess. But I'd say, yeah.
And just learn more and grow. It's just about the growth and progress. And I look back and go, where was I a year ago, and what have I accomplished in a year?
Yes.
Whether that's mental health progress, like, or for me, like, I'm going back to therapy again now. And so, like, things like that, where it's like, making effort, like even doing like things like small steps, like taking showers more regularly than you used to. If you're really deep in there, just start from scratch in your head. Be like, okay, we're back to the rough draft. Like, you know, you can go back to it, kind of like a writer's block, but like a life block,
a reset
kind of thing.
It's
a
like,
reset. It's okay to like be like, let's
reset
a little bit.
Yeah.
And that can help your mind kind of be like, okay, let's get out of the routine a little bit of, you know, what I've been used to, and stuff like that.
And at the same time that you're giving yourself grace, this perfectly wraps it up. Also, remember to not lie to yourself as well.
Stop lying to yourself.
Stop lying to yourself. Give yourself grace, but don't make excuses. Keep the best intentions for your pathway in mind and for other people. And I think, honestly, both of our motto is just, life is going to be great.
Yeah.
Be kind. Be kind to others. Be kind to yourself.
You can make the day a good day. You can make the day happy. You know, wake up and be like, I know I feel this way, but I'm going to try doing something different instead. I'm going to try doing something a little uncomfortable, and let's see how it goes. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
Let's just try it out.
Yeah.
You know, and just do things that bring you joy, and find people that bring the best out of you.
Yes.
And keep going towards those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all of these things combined.
Yes.
All these, that make this podcast what it is.
So fun. Again, please reach out to us. We want to hear from you.
And I'll be posting all this on TikTok. So for y'all in the TikTok comments, just comment whatever, and we'll just go through random anonymous ones, and maybe yours will be in there one day. Cool. So should we say it together like we did the last episode? All right. 1, 2, 3. Stop lying to yourself. Okay. Good night.
Stop lying to yourself.